Oh, God.
Not on my
Right.
screen. So,
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's live show on the Skew Chisel. Good evening, Joseph. Welcome. Brian of Hartwood Turning. I just have to increase my size of... Looks like I can't read otherwise. Okay, so Harvey Klein, good evening and welcome. Forking Owls, good evening and welcome to you. Mark Pritchard, hi. Dave Oatey. Andy from Andy H, welcome. Make It a Better Life, welcome to you. Andy Llanelli, how are you? Shamai, my friend, nice to see you. Wayne the Woodturner, good evening and how are you? And welcome, of course. Let's have a look through. Chris Nunn, good evening and welcome. James Hooper, Dries van Denden, good evening to you. Leona, good evening to you, Leona. Jordan Woodworks, good evening. Dave Shorten, I think I've given you one hello. I'll give you another one. Keith Coleman, good evening. Ronnie, good evening to you. Aaron Walsh, good evening. Ian Chappell, welcome all. Gordon Hill, welcome. And Nathan Carr. I think I've caught up and I haven't missed anybody out as yet. But I'm sure I will miss people out as it goes.
good evening, all. Can you actually hear me tonight? If you put yes in the chat, if you can hear me. Hello, everybody.
And we have Pete of Twisted Trees tonight, and I will say this again at 7:30 when we go live proper. Unfortunately, Mark, the gentleman woodturner, can't join us tonight, but Pete, my 50% of my pit crew is here. So hopefully between the two of us we'll get through this. It's really strange, not that anybody's really interested, but I keep getting this thing, the stream's current bit rate is low. I get this every week, but hopefully everything is okay.
Yeah, Leona says she can hear me, so that's good. Thank you,
Good.
Leona.
Good evening, Barry. Woodturning by Barry. Welcome. Steve Bertoni, good evening. Thank you for saying yes. Gaza, good evening. And welcome. Grant Fulbrook, welcome to you. And Letelier de Leo, good evening and welcome. Hoping you're getting everything through loud and clear. Clear mainly, of course. Colin King, good evening, my old mate. How are you? I'll be watching you until Call the Midwife is finished. My wife, Muriel, is also a Call the Midwife geek. MG and CPB, good evening and welcome to you. And Jim, Wood Revival, good evening to you. How are you? And Woody Schmidt, good evening. Michael Jackson, good evening to you. Welcome. Lovely to see you all. As I say, unfortunately, Mark is not able to join us this evening. Eddie Sorensen, good evening. How are you? All the way from Denmark. And welcome. And I have to tell you all, I'm relatively nervous tonight because the Skew is my least comfort zonal tool. So it should be fun, if nothing else. Good evening, TJ. How are you? And welcome. Midwife is a good show. Yes, so my wife keeps telling me. not something I've got into, I'm afraid.
I think I watched an episode at Christmas one year. That's
All
about
right.
it.
Oh, yeah. Steve Liddy, good evening to you and welcome. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat just to see if anybody else joins I haven't said hello to. I'm sure I've missed somebody. If not, good evening and welcome to all of you. Patrick Sassman, good evening. How are you? And welcome. One thing, as I will say again at 7:30 at the witching hour, is that if you wish to buy us a cup of coffee, then there is a pinned link at the top, buymeacoffee.com. And as I say every time I do a live, rather than the super chat, because YouTube takes such a large commission of your hard-earned cash. We'd rather a smaller donation via buymeacoffee.com. And thank you to all those that very kindly have to date bought us a coffee. Much appreciated. Eric Winkler, good evening. Rubber Wood, good evening. Dermot Waters, good evening and welcome. Alistair Turner, good evening and welcome to you, sir. A heart for every Turner who have to learn the Skew. That's very true. Woody has said, a heart for every Turner who have to learn the Skew. And Gav, good evening to you.
See, I am actually a fan of the Skew. I think it's a wonderful tool.
Well, I'm a fan
I was
of it.
forced to use the Skew for a couple of weeks before I was even allowed to see another tool. It took my fear away.
Yeah. I think the thing basically with the Skew is it has this aura about it, and it's basically because people get bad experiences when it is not an easy tool to use. You need to practice it more than your other tools to get sort of relatively catch-free turning. It gives a superb finish. There's no doubt about it. It's very versatile in the right hands. That's why, as I keep on harping on, professional production turners like our homegrown Steve Jones and many others around the world use it for their work because it's the most cost-effective tool to use. But it does take practice, and as they say, practice does make perfect, and especially in this case. Good evening, Timothy Wilson. Good evening to you and welcome. Terry Bartlett, good evening, Terry. Welcome to you. Involuntary screw threads, yeah, indeed. We might get a couple of those tonight. I'll try my hardest. Christoph, good evening to you and welcome. I'll just go back on the chat just to make sure I haven't missed anybody, but I'm sure that my pit crew of one tonight, Paul Hoyton, I think I might have said hello to you. Oh, Dermot Walters, good evening and welcome. Dicey, good evening and welcome. I have missed a few. No, I'm okay now, I think. Go back down to the bottom. Yeah, Tony Rudkin, good evening, Tony, and welcome. And Bram, good evening, Bram, and welcome. Malcolm Douglas, welcome to you. Rob Haynes, good evening, and welcome to you too. As I've said to the lads and lasses that were here earlier on, unfortunately, Mark, the other 50% of my pit crew, is unable to join us this evening, but so it's Pete and I. Not the King and I, but Ed W. Good evening, how are you? And welcome. Is it worth getting a record power AC 400 air filter? I have an Air Shield Pro, is a medium shop size. I personally would say yes, Ed. I mean, I've got an air filter. I use a powered respirator, but it is surprising the amount of airborne particles that those things collect. So my answer to you would be yes.
I would say yes, and the best time to use it is the hour after you finish work.
Yeah, and
the air is nice and clean when you come in the next day.
Yeah, and some of them you can actually put on for an hour, let's say, before you get in.
Yeah, the AC 400's got a timer on it.
Yeah, so you can do that as well. So the answer is yes, definitely. Lawrence Vajega, good evening to you. Shay, BB Turning, good evening. Blue Light Turner, good evening to you and welcome. Colin, good evening. I think I might have said hello to you, but nevertheless. Misfit74, good evening and welcome. Janet Vanderlaan, good evening to you and welcome. Welcome to everybody, of course, without a doubt. 5 minutes to go before we go officially live, although we are live now, obviously. Just enjoying your company and having a chat. I will say, Ed W., it's my opinion. I mean, Pete agrees. You can't be too careful with dust, but a dust extractor, it is quite frightening, actually. You've got the power on, you've got your powered respirator on and that, but it's surprising what that filter picks up. I can't recommend them highly enough. And the entry level ones, I mean, my garage workshop is 20 by 15, and I've got the entry level one, and it is more than capable of handling the stuff. Kay Bacon, good evening and welcome. How are you? Anthony Moyle, good evening. Has the AC 400 and wouldn't be without it. Right, let's have a slurp. Making a better life, Florence. No, I know Making a Better Life's name is Lawrence. You must apologise. My memory is terrible, and I don't always remember people's real names.
I think Making a Better Life is Di, actually. I think he's saying hates two people.
Ah, right, okay. File Coast Woodturning. Good evening, Simon. How are you? And welcome. Alison Oram, good evening, and welcome to you, my dear. Lovely to see you. Or nice to see you. To see you, nice, as our old, late, lamented Bruce Forsyth used to say.
Quick question there from Michael Jackson. What power respirator do you use?
I use the Evolution, which is basically a JSP. I've found it extremely good. I have also, I know I'm a very lucky man, I've also got the Trend. The Trend has a slightly better filtration. However, I find it extremely uncomfortable to wear for any period of time. This thing, I've had this for 10 years now. I had the JSP originally, and I've used it all the time, and I find it brilliant, personally.
I always say everybody's got a different size head, so go to the two shops and try them both on.
Yes, indeed.
It is JSP or the Axminster copy of it.
Evening, Rob.
Or the Trend. Go and try them both on, see which one you're comfortable with.
Yeah, agreed.
What suits one won't suit another.
Yeah, I think the thing is that with the filtration system, I would not ever recommend only having that. I think when you're sanding, you should have an efficient dust extraction system at the point of generating your sanding dust, which gets rid of the majority of it. Your respirator then filters anything else, the airborne stuff and the very fine stuff. Because don't forget, we all take our respirators off when we stop sanding, and there's a lot of microscopic stuff in the air, and that's where the filtration system comes in. That takes that away. So as many points of extraction as you can have, the better, in my personal opinion. But the big thing is to have extraction at the point of producing your sanding dust. Jay Crevins, good evening and welcome. Vincent Charlton, good evening and welcome. Greg Alexander, good evening and welcome to you too. And Mark Valentine. I'll just very quickly go back up and have a look if I've missed anybody. Don't think I have. I think I've said hello to everybody.
Michael's asking, do they ship to the USA? I know you can buy the JSP in the USA. I don't know about Trend, but
I think you can buy Trend. Sure you can. Definitely, you can get the Trend in the US. I am absolutely sure of that. The JSP, Pete says he's definite. The Evolution is an Axminster product, and I know that it is basically the JSP with different labeling. But I know that Axminster delivered to the US, so yes, you can get both of them in the US. Drew McEwen, my old mate Drew. Good evening and welcome. Lovely to see you, mate. Jeff Webb, good evening. Captain Kirk, good evening and welcome.
Steve from SK Crafts, hiya.
Hello, Steve. How are you? Steve Kerville from SK Crafts. I'm honoured. Mind you, you've got the unlikely lads now. You've got Wayne and Steve, you know, the usual mob. And Peter at Parkwood, good evening, Peter. How are you? Welcome. Barry Fisher, good evening. PJE, hello. I think I said hello to you, but hello again. Hi, Make. Is me Make? Robert Dolman, good evening. How are you? And welcome. Okay, we're talking 7:30, so I'll go through the usual blurb. It'll bore you, but hopefully people that have just joined. Good evening and welcome. Tonight is going to be my take on the Skew Chisel for beginners, going through the basics, and it's definitely going to be a case of do as I say, not as I do with this tool. It is my least proficient tool, and you know how proficient I am with the others, so this is not the proficiency, but I'm going to go through the basics to get the best from it. A very versatile tool. I will also go through various styles of tool and the sharpening. Again, unfortunately, Mark, the gentleman Woodturner, can't join us this evening, so 50% of my pit crew is here in the form of Pete, Twisted Trees, Pete Ravenscroft. So Pete's going to guide me through and let me know any questions. Please, I encourage you, even when I'm turning, demonstrating, whatever I'm doing, if you have a question, put it in the chat and Pete will relay it to me and we can answer it, or I can answer it. Pete will be able to answer most of them anyway, but if it's specifically me, I'll stop and answer the question at that time. Also, any of you that like the show and would like to buy us a coffee, there is a link pinned at the top there, buymeacoffee.com, and we would kindly ask you, if you're going to do that, please do it as opposed to super chat. That's very kind, and a big thank you to all of those that have up to now bought us a coffee. It is much appreciated. Okay, so we'll start off maybe a little bit backwards. I will go to this view now, and I'll just go through the basics of the styles of skew that you can get. The most common is the straight over grind skew. This is a 1-inch skew. It's quite short because it's one I used for years to try very different grinds. I use a 25-degree bevel. You can use a 15-degree bevel and indeed a 35. It is purely your choice and what you prefer. The rule of thumb with bevels is approximately 1.5 times that of the thickness of the bar stock. It's not a rule of thumb by any means, but it gives you an idea of the makeup of the skew. One thing worthy of mention, most skews now come with what they call a rolled edge, which makes it much easier to use and it doesn't dig into the cast iron tool rests. I'm fortunate I happen to have a hardened steel rod type tool rest, which is a robust, but 90% of tool rests are not. So if it comes, or yours has a square edge to it, then all you need to do is just relieve those edges a bit and round them over with a very fine file or a piece of abrasive. So that's the standard skew, and that is the one that I am least happy using. Then we come to the radius skew, which is one that I prefer to use. This started life as a standard skew. I will show you the sharpening. It's very simple to sharpen, and again 25 degrees. I also have a 1/2 inch and a 1/4 inch. A 1/4 inch? No, I have a 3/4, I beg your pardon, and a 1/2 inch. Then the other type is a round skew, and that is a skew which is made of round bar, and again this has a 25-degree bevel angle. Again, it's a very easy tool to use. I don't use it very often, but having said that, it is one that is available too. So what I'll do now is cut to the famous Pro Edge and go through the basics of sharpening, and we'll take the standard skew first. Now with the
Dave Rothwell from Ottawa has joined us.
good evening and
Patrick
welcome.
Bowers from Arkansas, who are stretching across the Atlantic.
Good evening and welcome.
Jennifer from Jennifer's Craft and Creation, she's coming as well.
Hi Jennifer.
Hi to everybody.
Welcome. And the first one I'm going to use or to sharpen is the standard skew. Now with the Pro Edge, it comes with a guide, and all you have to do is literally up to the belt, the other side, up to the belt, whether it's a wheel or a belt, and that's all you need to do. Now this is, as I say, a standard skew. This one started live as a standard skew, and I turned it into a radius. Very easy to do. I happen to have the preference, about a fifth of the bevel is straight here, which is great for peeling cuts and tenons if you should so wish to use it for that purpose. But again, all you do is put pressure down onto the table and put it up to the belt and rotate. And just keep it a little bit longer on the straight bit, and then turn him over and do the same thing, and just bring it up to the belt and job done. So that's it, completely sharpened. Now the round skew is a bit of a pain, a bit like the oval skew, I suppose. That's one I did forget to mention as well, which is another skew. I haven't got one, but they are available. Now with this, what I find the easiest way to do, you have it on the skew that the actual edge is at, and bring it up, and you will feel when you've got the full bevel. And the same on the other side, turn him over and just feel when you've got the whole of the bevel done and you've touched up the edge. Now if you have a wheel, an easy way to find is to get a Sharpie and just colour in the bevel. So what will happen is you'll know when you need to alter your setup slightly. It is very simple with a Pro Edge because it is. So our goal is to remove all the Sharpie and just, there we go, I missed a little bit there, so all I have to do is to start here and go there, and I've still missed a bit, so the wonders of live.
A question from Steve at SK Crafts.
Yeah.
Mike, do you only use the diamond belt?
Yes, I do. The only time I use the 60. Let's go back to my beautiful face. I only use the 60 grit belt when I'm doing major reprofiling, and then I go from 60 to 120, and then I go to the diamond belt. I don't use 240 because the diamond belt's about 180, I think, in sort of reference, something of that ilk. So yeah, from the 60 to the 120, and then the diamond belt. But the diamond belt stays on for everything. And
Yeah,
it should.
Was asking how long will the belt typically last.
Well,
mine's over a year old. Martin Saban-Smith, I believe, is getting on for 6 years old now.
Yeah,
it lasts a long time.
They will last, as Pete says, a very long time. I'm not a production turner. I'm not a pro turner. Martin does an awful lot of turning, and as Pete says, he's had his, I think, 5 years, something like that, 5-6 years, and it's still going strong. If you have any queries, give Ed Oliver a shout at Oliver's Wood Turning, and he'll talk you through. But they are great. They're a good investment. They really are, in my opinion. So that's basically the sharpening of the skew, and there are sort of 3 major cuts with the skew. It's a peeling cut, a planing.
Mark Pritchard's asking, is that 15 or 25 degrees?
Mine are all 25 degrees, Mark. I say the preferred. A lot of people use 15 degrees. The reason I use 25 degrees, I find that works well for me. If anything, I think the 15 degrees is a little more aggressive. And it could be argued that a 15 degree bevel either side is obviously a finer edge, which means it's going to last a little little less long, but I don't think that is really an issue, to be honest with you, because it takes seconds to refresh the edge on a skew, whether it be with a diamond card, which, by the way, is something to mention. If you don't want to go back to your grinder every time, if you just take a diamond card, 180, 300, whatever you want, and just lay it on the heel and the toe of the bevel, like so, and in a circular motion, I won't do it on this because I've just sharpened it, and go that way, you basically create a micro bevel, if you like, but it means you don't have to go back to the sharpening system, whether it be a wheel or a linisher type, each time. I advocate having your sharpening system literally no more than a step and a half away from your lathe, because then all you do is turn round and sharpen. And if you use jigs and you use a sharpening system, repeatability is the whole idea of it, and it literally takes seconds. I think you might have heard me say this before. One of the most important things in turning is keeping a fresh edge, keeping your tools sharp, and it's nothing. It's not more relevant than the skew, because you need a really keen edge. You can hone it. I've tried it with. I've used a leather, a strop and everything else. Yes, it does improve the edge slightly, but at my level, to be honest with you, if it's working well, it gives a really good finish. And again, if I'm honest with you, I mainly use it as on a planing cut. I very rarely use it for anything else because I'm not that at home with it. But the same principles for a skew chisel apply as they do for gouges. You have to maintain bevel contact. And let's be fair, you will get more of a negative result if you don't keep that bevel contact than you will with a gouge. It is quite an unforgiving tool, but don't let that put you off, because it is only the basics you have to be able to achieve. And as I said earlier, do as I say, not necessarily as I do, because I'm no expert with the skew. But the same fundamentals apply. And the other fundamental, which applies to all gouges as well, is grip. A lot of people, because if you're anxious about something, you're tense. So if you're tense, you're going to be holding it too tight. So if you're holding it too tight, that reduces your flexibility. And also, if you do get a catch, and you will get a catch with all your gouges, but you will get catches with this. If you're hanging on for grim death and you're pushing into the wood, which you shouldn't be doing, but if you do, that's going to magnify that catch to I don't know, 5, 6 times, 10 times more than would be if you're holding it nice and relaxed, firm but not tight, and you're taking a nice fine cut. If you get a catch, it's going to be minimal. I might be able to prove that later on. Now, the cuts, we'll do the peeling cut first, unless there are any questions immediately before we sort of carry on with an actual demonstration of how not possibly to use the skew. I think I'll carry on.
We're good to go. We've got Rob CP and Brian have joined us. Brian of Outward Wood Turning.
Good evening, both, and welcome.
I'm not sure if you've said Robert Dolman before, but he's in there as well.
I have said hello to Robert. William Kenny, have I said hello to you? But good evening. And Leroy, good evening to you, sir. Right, I've been informed by my pit crew that this is a good angle for what I'm going to be doing. So let the fireworks commence. The peeling cut. Now, a peeling cut is basically taking something down to round. So what I do, and this is just my personal opinion, is I have the tool rest slightly above center. And again, the theory is the same as it would be with a spindle roughing gouge, is you want to rub the bevel, you don't want to engage the cut to begin with, and then you raise the handle into the cut. Now, I'm using a radius skew. Now the reason for having that straight bit there is that I can achieve a relatively straight tenon. But what I'll do in the interests of science, I will use the standard skew to begin with, and we'll see. One thing I would suggest is never engage the complete length of your edge, because that's going to cause problems. Speed, again, if we start off at a low speed of 200, this is 290, 300 RPM, you can do it, but I will demonstrate that it is not a very pleasant or efficient experience. I've lifted the handle, I'm engaging the cut, but there's a lot of bouncing and there's an awful lot of cluck, 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 because you're cutting air. So in this case, speed is your friend. And the reason for that is, with any square stock you bring into round, the faster you go, the more you are cutting effectively solid wood, because the edge is coming around a lot quicker. I'm just going to put on my safety glasses, turn off the lathe, and yes, as usual, I will state on the safety note, I would normally wear my full respirator with a full face shield, but for demonstrations that is just not possible because you can't hear me, which might be an advantage, but there you go. So I'm now running at just under 2000 RPM. Okay. Before I go any further, there are several ways of getting the pressure through the tool onto the tool rest, which is what you want to do with this hand. You can go that way. You can go underhand if you wish. You can do that. This is a very short tool because, as I say, it's about 10 years old and I've done a lot of work on this. As you see, I've ground it all away. Whatever is comfortable for you. All you want to do with this hand is to apply, like with any other gouge, apply pressure through the tool down onto the tool rest. So whichever way you feel more comfortable. You don't want to be guiding it, nothing. It's just purely putting pressure down onto the tool rest to keep the tool stable. So again, handle really low. We've got the edge at 90 degrees, if you like, or parallel with the wood. So rub the bevel and lift the handle till you get your cut and move in. This is very dry oak, not the best wood, most probably, for this sort of a demo. And you're doing bits at a time, not engaging the whole blade. All I'm doing is lifting the handle nearly there. Now this is in the hands of somebody who doesn't do this operation very often. I'm just here to show you what can be done with the tool. So now we've got a tenon. I know it's a big tenon, but as you can see, that is the peeling cut. We have got that down to round in a relatively short space of time, and not so important on a tenon, but we got a relatively nice finish as well. Now the reason for that is, which very conveniently brings me into the fact that basically a skew chisel is a negative rake scraper as well, because if I go to this very quickly, that's my negative rake scraper, and yes, that's 35 degrees, 35 degrees, 35 degrees, 35 degrees on the skew. So it is essentially a negative rake scraper as well. And if I'm reminded by Pete later on, I will demonstrate how that can be used as well. But as I say, the pros and the production turners use a standard skew. I feel a lot happier using a radius skew. I've done this now. I'm very proud of myself. Now, the other thing is a pommel. So if I bring that down ever so slightly more, now a pommel is basically a roundover on the corners and coming down to here. Now, I'm not a production turner. I very rarely cut a pommel, but it's just to show what it can do. You can do it with a gouge as well. Now, I'm going to chicken out here, and I'm going to use my radius skew because I feel happier with that. And if I mess up on that, then it really is good night, nurse. Again, the same thing. Again, what I'm attempting to do is to take the corners off on a radius and keep this square stock and just nibble away at the corners. So again, using the same idea, just lift the handle to get your cut, and all you're doing is rounding over. We'll stop there just to show you. Should be a clean cut. That is from the previous cut, but you see what I'm saying or what I'm achieving here, and it depends where you want to be. So I'm lifting the handle, rolling, moving the tool round, keeping bevel contact. I'm just slicing through the wood, and then the idea is to get it right down to the bottom.
Sorry, Michael Stratton's managed to sneak in again.
Good evening, Michael. How are you? Nice to see.
I missed him earlier.
Good evening to you both, and welcome. So that is a pommel, a very unprofessional pommel, but I think you can see what I'm trying to get at. And just for a stupid hero move, I'll just try and finish that off with this one, the standard skew. Nearly. And I think you can see the idea. The one good thing I would think possibly with this, if you want a nice crisp transition here, you could use that point just to get that down. Got the fluffies there, look. And that just shows you what can be achieved with the skew on that. Now, the next thing is a planing cut. I will do more cuts with it, with the skew, but the next cut is a planing cut, and that's basically a going across the length of a piece. This is a piece of chestnut. Now, if you followed my lives, you know I don't like chestnut. It's a very dusty wood. This is very dry, and just get that in the middle there. Whoops, let's move the camera. That's okay. I got my camera literally there, so hopefully it's given you a good view of what I'm doing. Now, a planing cut is basically cleaning up and getting a nice clean surface on your spindle. Again, I like to have the tool rest slightly above center. And it depends on the size of wood as well. So this will be quite a bit above center for this one. And basically, you're traversing across the piece. Now, the idea is, like usual, there's the old ABC, and that's anchor, bevel, cut. I think Paul Graham mentioned that last week, and that's something that I kept in my mind and still do, because especially with the skew, sometimes, and I don't know if any of you have ever done it before with a spindle roughing gouge, where you're going along and you've actually engaged the edge before you've got your anchor, and you get that sort of quick, and all that is you've engaged the edge before you've got your anchor on the tool rest. Well, if you do that with a skew, that can be slightly worse than with a spindle roughing gouge, let's just put it that way. So the idea of a skew is not to engage the points when you're doing a planing cut, because if you do, and I'll turn it down for this because we don't have any hero moves here, do we? Okay, so the idea is to twist the handle. I'm only doing 800 revs here, okay? Twist the handle, engage the cut, and move across the tool rest, keeping the cut in the same position on the edge all the way through the cut. Now, if you ride, as you can see now, I'm getting nearer and nearer the heel. You really want to be on the bottom third and in the middle of the bottom third of your bevel. Now, if you carry on, hang on, let's start cutting again. Now, if I keep moving, I'm moving myself around, and then we engage. Nothing happens because I'm so good. Come on. No, if I do it with this chappy, I got a slight catch there, but the worst one is if you ride up the bevel. So we're going to the middle now, we're going into the top third, and we engage that point. There's the catch. So what have we done? We've taken a chunk out of the wood, okay? Now I'll just go to the pure overhead on this one, so you can
Nichols
see.
asked, are you tilting the skew slightly to keep from engaging the whole edge? You never engage the whole edge of a skew.
No.
You're mostly just below the centre line.
Yeah. As I said earlier on, whatever skew you're using, if you imagine a halfway line, and if you put it into 3, you've got the third. You want to be cutting in the middle of the bottom third. So essentially, excuse me, coming away from camera, I can use it on this one because I won't be using this one a lot. There is the bottom third of your, is the camera picking that up? Yeah. There's the bottom third of your edge, and you want to be cutting ideally in the middle of that bottom third. You don't want to be cutting down here, and you certainly don't want to be cutting up here. You can cut in the middle, but you will, as you saw there, the result you get if you dig in your heel is by no means as bad as if you dig in the toe. And that's proved it here. And what's happened is, as you saw, I've been going along here like so, and I've been moving the cut, and it finally got this, and it's taken it down there. Now, the result of that is not as bad with holding the tool at what I call a firm pressure, as opposed to hanging on in there and really gripping it for grim death. That would have been a lot worse, because it's magnified, because you're digging into the wood, and you've got what's happening is, when that happens, it's throwing it off. But if you're digging into the wood with a lot of pressure and you're putting forward pressure in, when that happens, I'm doing it now and I'm pressing in, hasn't got anywhere to go, so it's going to be an even worse catch. But if you're holding it, as I say, with firm pressure and not for grim death, any catches you get will be reduced significantly. And the old adage, don't ask me how I know, but it is true. without a shadow of a doubt. And Pete, who has been turning with the Skew a lot longer than me, will hopefully agree with what I'm saying.
Yep.
So you don't want to be hanging on for grim death. Now, if you do a planing cut, as I've explained, you want to be cutting just around that area there. So we'll turn the speed up. Now, I'll use the standard Skew to start with. Now, the
Ray
idea...
Crovins has said, please
Sorry,
warn
yep.
Mikey's sleeve was very close to the truck on the last demo. I
Say,
think that's just camera angles, but...
say that again, sorry.
Jay Crovins has said, hi Pete, please warn Mikey's sleeve was very close to the chuck on the last demo. I think that's just camera angles, but...
It is.
I'm telling you what he said.
Yeah, that's very kind of you. Thanks. The thing is, when I'm going this way, it is the camera angle. I'm always very aware. I haven't got loose sleeves, but sometimes it does look a bit closer than it is, I assure you. But thank you for the observation. So going back to the planing cut with the standard Skew, again, I say speed is your friend. You don't have to go breakneck speed, but 2,000 odd RPM when you're doing a planing cut, I think is about right. That's for me personally. So again, you anchor, ride the bevel, the other thing I didn't mention, let's say we're cutting on that area there. Wherever you're cutting on the edge, you want to be supporting directly or as near as you can underneath that cut line, because then you are supporting the cut with the tool rest. If you're cutting here, your support is all the way back here. You're cutting there, you've got no support directly under the cut. And conversely, obviously, if you go in here, you've got the support sort of in front of the cut, if you like, which is not what you want. So when you're cutting, your goal is to get the cut where I said it would be, around that area, but you want support underneath it. And all you're doing with your hand, as I say, your left hand, is providing downward pressure through the tool to the tool rest. So rub the bevel, pick up the cut. Now, I'm really low there, so I have to adjust. So I adjust, and now I'm cutting just on that point there. And as I say, this is not my preferred design of tool. I'm just above the heel there. Now, if I use a radius skew, the good thing about a radius skew is your heel is out of the way of where you're cutting. So you've got that sort of, it's not directly in line of where you're cutting. It's out of the way. And also the top is out of the way of your cut as well. I just find them, if I get a catch, I get a catch, that's fine. But again, you're rubbing, and all you're doing, you're twisting the handle to get your cut and move along the piece. Keeping the same plane all the way through the cut. That's why it's important to be comfortable at the end of the cut. Now that's going over that. The whole idea is to get this even. Now you can see that the shaving is coming off approximately the same area right the way through the cut. That's where I'm going into the divot. Now, if I turn the handle in more, or twist the handle more, I can get a heavier cut, take more wood away. Now, I'm not holding on for grim death, but the whole idea is to keep that shaving coming off the same part of the edge. We're getting there. I find, as I say, the radius skew to be a lot more forgiving. And it does just as good a job. Now, as I say, I am not in any way as proficient as I could be, because I don't put the hours in. Now, already after just doing 3 or 4 passes, it's feeling better. I'm feeling more at one with the tool, as it were, and with however many people are watching, it's not my...
There's your stuff in that up. I'll ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah, I'll just finish this because I'm on a roll. Okay.
Right,
Yes.
Andy Lemonade asks, can you radius an oval skew?
Can you radius an oval skew? Yes, you can. You can if you wish. I mean, I say don't use an oval skew because I find them. Well, I don't know, difficult. Not difficult to sharpen, but I just don't. I never did like
They
it.
are harder to sharpen.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to get it right in the middle of the, of your semicircle, if you like, call it what you will, on the edge. You've got to get it just right. It's very much similar to the round skew with regards when you're trying to register that bevel on your wheel or your belt, whatever. You haven't got a flat bar to do it with, obviously, so you've got the roll factor coming in. And with this, it's quite easy. I presume with the oval skew as well, you just have to find that sweet spot to get that complete bevel.
I do actually have an oval, and I do like the oval.
Yeah, that's each to his own.
Eric's asked another camera change question, I think. He says, is the whole skew riding on the tool rest the same or tipping up on the right side? It is tipped. I'm not sure if you've got an angle that'll show that or not.
Well, what I can, don't know. No, that won't do. Hang on a minute. Yeah, that is flat on the bar. Okay, so when I want to make a cut, what I have to do is lift the handle and twist. I'm twisting from right to left, so the top of the skew is off the tool rest. I am just pivoting on that point there, approximately there, which is when I'm doing the cut. That point there is directly beneath where I'm cutting. So what I'm doing is lifting and twisting until I engage the cut. Now that's on a radius skew, and the same thing applies to a standard skew where you would be, let's say, flat on the whole bar is now on the tool rest. So to be able to engage the cut, you have to swivel the handle up, so your toe is going to be raised. There is air under there. So what you have to do there is exactly the same thing. You have to find that sweet spot where you've got the, and if I go to the overhead, that might be better for that one. So basically what you're doing is you're drawing a line from where you're cutting, where you're raising or shaving, and you want support from the bottom part of your tool directly under that. So again, as usual with me, a long answer to a very easy question. Yes, you raise the tool to engage the cut. Hope that answers it.
Yep, and there's 2 connected questions.
Yeah.
Question is, thought you should start the cut by working out towards the edge. Hang on a sec. You see you working from the outside in. Yes, that's unsupported bevel at that point. Secondary question, can you only use a skew right to left?
Nope. You can use...
Connected, basically.
Yep, you could use the skew either way. We'll go to the overhead. You could use the skew... Excuse me, I've got to get rid of this magnet because it keeps on trapping my tools. Right. This for me, because I'm a right-handed turner, is the way that I prefer, right to left. I'm happier going right to left. But you can go left to right. I'm now standing sort of to the left of the piece, and the same thing applies. I just lift the handle, twist, and go in that way. And now I'm pushing away from myself. You can hear a bit of juddering there because I'm not in the best place, but you can, with a bit of practice, you can do both ways. And the same thing applies, as I say, with gouges, the same as a skew, whatever you're using. You want to use your body, not lock your hands into your body. And I haven't got a far away one, but what you need to do, if I stand on tippy toes, rather than doing this sort of thing with your arms out from your body, you want to be tucked in and locked. Get this part of your arms just beneath your elbows, your forearm here, just against your body, so that you're moving in one movement. And with the skew, it is so evident when you're doing a planing cut, especially when you start to either roll it slightly, where you're changing where it's cutting on the bevel, or you've changed your weight distribution, whatever, that's when you get a little blip. And the whole idea is to practice right to left or left to right, whatever, in a smooth motion. And it is more critical to be able to do that with the skew to get that lovely, clean cut on a planing cut. And I found the best way to do it. I haven't practiced this afternoon. I haven't used the skew properly like this for quite a while. But after a little bit, you start to get into it again. And that's my whole point with the majority of tools. You get more proficient with them the more hours or the more time you put into practicing with them. There's no doubt in my mind that you possibly get close with the bowl gouge, but the finish you get off the tool when it goes right is second to none. It really is second to none. And it's not burnishing, it is cutting, the bevel isn't burnishing, you're cutting the lovely shavings you're getting. As I say, chestnut isn't the best wood for show. If I got a bit of sycamore on there or something, it'd be very impressive with lovely shavings coming off. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm here just to try and show you how to use the tool.
I think you just answered Nigel Oram, who said, is there a benefit of the skew rather than using a sharp bowl gouge? I think you just answered that, really.
Yeah, on a spindle, if you use your bowl gouge or half-inch spindle gouge, whatever on a spindle, you will get a really good finish. But there is nothing, in my opinion, to compare with the finish that you get off a skew chisel. That's why the big boys, if you like, the production turners, etc., use them for that reason. It'll be funny later on when I start doing beads, because I'm not way proficient, but I can still show you how to do them. Whether I get it done or not, I don't know. The other thing is as well, there are a lot of people who use a radiused skew of some sort, but a lot of I keep on harping on about Steve Jones, but to me, he is the benchmark for, being an artisan of the craft. He uses a standard skew. I think it's a 1 inch, and he uses a standard skew. And in the point of sharpening, he uses a 120 grit aluminium oxide wheel, and he freehand sharpens. And if you don't know Steve Jones, go on to social media and put his name in and look at some of the wonderful videos. He's a production turner, and he makes this sing, literally sing. But 35 years experience. And the same as Pete just said, he wasn't allowed to use anything else until he had got the skew under his belt. What we tend to do, and most hobby turners tend to do, they use the skew, they get a couple of catches, and it goes back in the rack, and they don't use it again because they're afraid of it, or they just think, I don't need to use it. So, it's its own. It creates its own problems. But if you persevere with it, it is a very satisfying tool to master or to get results with. I love using it, but I don't use it often enough. That's the problem.
I think a secondary problem is actually a very hard tool to demonstrate. So
Yeah.
people watching YouTube videos don't see it used properly that often.
No. The only, I say the only real way, the best way is have a lesson and include the skew in that lesson and be close and personal with somebody that knows what they're doing. Even if someone was with me, they would see what I was doing in sort of person, and there is no substitute for that in my opinion. But us YouTubers try the best we can to convey the stuff across to you, and unfortunately, you can only see it on there, and you have to put it into practice and get the catches and work at it
I think
yourselves.
it's a very 3D tool. You kind of need to see a lot of different angles which don't show so well on a flat screen.
Exactly, yeah. There are a lot of nuances, I think, with the skew, because you only have to be out sort of a minuscule amount for it to alter its characteristics in how it's cutting. I'm not saying you get a catch, but what I'm saying is when it's going right, because it just glides, and there's no, you get a bit of juddering sometimes, and you've either slightly moved your balance point, your fulcrum very so slightly, you might have raised it a bit more, and it's those very slight nuances that make a big difference to the results you get from the skew. And gouges are a little bit more forgiving in that respect, because let's say you're using the wing, you've got a bit more there to play with that doesn't need to be so exacting as this chappie does. But it is a very, very versatile tool and gives great results. One of the people might disagree with me. One of the easiest ones to use is the little 1/2 inch, especially when doing things like rolling beads, because you haven't got so much tool to actually move and lift up. It is an easier tool to use, as is indeed the round skew. And possibly that's why Pete likes the oval skew, because it is possibly that little bit easier to maneuver than a square bar,
Yeah.
But as I say, we all have preferences. So that's covered the planing cut. I'll do a few more things on this first before I do a slicing cut. I've done the pommel, and I'm not going to, well, I will attempt it with the standard skew, but beads and coves, we'll have a laugh, I suppose, if nothing else. I'll just go to the round skew very quickly, and that'll have covered the skews that I have available insofar as their standard makeup. So if we go to that again, now the round skew, which I've lost, oh, there it is. Okay, the round skew is a round bar. It is skewed. There's a very slight radius on that.
Missing the end of that tool, Mike.
Sorry?
Missing the end of that tool is behind the overlay. That's better.
Oh, yeah. No one else has got an overlay. Only you. I didn't.
Behind the overhead camera, rather.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. I got you. Sorry. Okay. That is why it is so great having pit crew. There we go. Do it that way. So, round bar, slight skew there, and then 25-degree angle on that. You could put a 15-degree angle if you wish, 35, whatever you prefer. So what I was saying earlier on about ease of rolling, etc. Well, of course, being it's round bar, it's much easier to actually to roll and to move in that respect. Same principles apply. You anchor, ride the bevel, and then twist into the cut. And away you go. There we go. It's okay. I haven't used this for many a month. Here we go. It does, it does a good job. I think the thing with this is that if you're doing something like a round over here, then it is very effective because it rolls so easily. And as long as you maintain that bevel contact, I've never actually used it like this before, but
I
yeah,
find those too narrow to be overly helpful in that particular cut.
yeah. But the thing is that, okay, it take longer, but it is very easy to do. No, I'm not really taking any care. I go into this with the butt of the gate, and where I'm getting that there, look, I'm getting obviously if I and I'll turn the speed down. I've never had a catch on one of these because I haven't used them often enough. Again, if I actually engage the toe on a cut, I'm going to get a catch. So the idea is to keep it there. But if I go here, I still, okay, I got
There
a
you go.
catch. I got a catch there. Right, we got one, and I engaged the the heel there. And yes, you get catches with these like you will with any else. But it was, not noticeable. Why wasn't it noticeable? Because I'm not hanging on to the tool for grim death. I think you can be a little bit you be a bit more blasé with this tool, I must be honest.
Nigel's asking, do you have an opinion on Colwyn Way set of skews, and would you buy any?
The reason, yeah, I'm sure they're excellent. The reason I won't buy it is I've got 4 skews and I'll never need to buy another one, to be honest with you. But yes, I've got a great deal of respect and time for Colwyn, and his signature tools would be, you know, would be a
For
good
those who don't
investment
know,
if.
Colwyn's forged skews are flared out towards the end.
Right. Well,
And
I've never used them that style, so I can't really comment. But I would be pretty sure that anything that Colwyn would put his name to would be tip top.
I'd like to try one. I haven't had the opportunity yet.
I'd like to try one. I'd like to try a 1.5 inch skew, but I'm not prepared to spend that sort of money on a tool that I most probably would very rarely use. But
That's it.
the big thing with any sort of tools you decide to go with, my advice seriously is to get your tools, your basic tools, and master those first. And I've said this in previous videos, and I sincerely believe it because I have spent a disgraceful amount of money in the early days on, I need that, I need this, I can't live without that. I'm a bit of a tool junkie, self-confessed anyway. And I think, as I've said before, I've actually sold on eBay and other means more tools than I've actually got in my rack behind. And I decided that what I would do was to try and rationalize what I've got and try and get as proficient as I can with what I have. Everybody has their preferences, whether it be Sorby, Henry Taylor, whether it's Carter, and so it doesn't matter what it is. My advice is whatever you go with the best you can afford and stick with them and get proficient with them. And then as you go along, let's just say you've got the 6 basic tools, you start to do something and you're feeling that there's a bit lacking, then you have experience to be able to say, oh, well, if I had that tool, that would make that job a lot more efficient, a lot better, blah, blah, blah. But it's through experience. I think the beginners, I for one, am definitely guilty of it in the beginning because you don't know an awful lot about it. You think, oh, that's going to make me a better turner. That's going to make me a better turner. It isn't going to make you a better turner. It's going to make you a turner that is not as proficient as they could be with a basic set of tools to begin with. And that is very important. And that includes the skew. You know, even a spindle roughing gouge, there is a technique to getting the best out of a spindle roughing gouge. Every tool you have is worth the effort to take that time to get proficient with it. And then any shortcomings in your turn, 95%, I said this before, 95% of your turning can be done with a standard set of tools, 5, 6 tools. It's when you start to
Mark
specialize.
Valentine has made the good point that using a ring drive or a friction drive of some sort, if you get a bad catch, the wood stops. Yes, it's a very good thing to use.
Yeah, it is. I
and
personally,
King has said a very Joseph King thing.
Yeah.
When are you demonstrating the Russian lathe knife?
Watch my lips, Joseph. Never. Never. I'll put Pete back on in the picture a minute. You're back on. You can be seen now, Pete. I've lost my thread now because Joseph has put me off my stride.
Friction drive.
Friction drive. I personally prefer, and I use them all the time, are the Robert Sorby or similar steb centers. This is a steb drive. Okay, this is a medium one, I think. What it is, you have a spring. The center is sprung loaded, and you've got teeth here that grab into the wood. And you can put as little or as much pressure on these as you want. Now, I have always turned, since I bought them, I don't use anything else apart from on larger stuff. I have to use a four-pronged drive to get a real good seat. But for your average spindle turning, these are excellent. For that same reason, if you use a ring drive, if you get a catch, it will spin. I had that. I'll demonstrate. I've got this tight, fairly secure. If I go to just the plain overhead. Okay, now just to show you, that is a steb center. These are Sorby. This is one that fits in your chuck, and that's just for convenience. It's exactly the same. Does exactly the same as the standard steb drive. Now, the brilliance of these, as I say, is the fact that if you don't hitch them up too much and you get a catch, so I've hardly put any pressure on there at all, but it's just driving. Okay, so we take the standard skew and dig it into the wood. This should be interesting. Okay, so
Face shield on, obviously, everybody in the audience.
I have actually got my glasses on only, but here we go. Can't get a catch now. No, I'll tell you what I'll do. I don't know. See, when you get to my level of proficiency, it's difficult to get a catch. I know. We do it that way. Yeah. Oh dear.
Want it? Yeah, can't find it.
There we go.
Yep.
It's spinning, and it's not spinning. So, my word, I've never had to try so hard to get a catch in my life. So that's the brilliance and the big advantage, in my opinion, of steb drives, but a ring center or ring drive, whatever, which I've never had. It's the same principle, is that your holding points that are driving and holding are not as rigid as they would be were you using a standard setup, and it is a bit more forgiving should you get a catch. The stock will spin. All you have to do is hitch it up again, a bit tighter, and away you go. But I use these just out of pure habit now. And funny enough, just as an aside to bore everybody, somebody very kindly gave me some recently cut down, like 3 or 4 days, eucalyptus. And he gave me some rounds, so I was end grain bowl job, and I've actually got a video coming up in the next week or so. And I just wet turned it, and I used, to start off, I was between centres to get a tenon, and I was using these, and of course it's wet, very wet, and it just wasn't man enough, so I had to get the old 4-prong drive and whack it in with a hammer to get a really good seat, for the drive. But in the majority of cases, these are brilliant. So, again, a very long answer to a very short question. I must stop rabbiting on as much. Excuse me. I do hate this chestnut. It's so dusty. Okay, so roundovers, and I've got to do the peeling cut. But are there any questions? Good evening, Brian, Hartwood Turning. How are you? Are there any questions at this
Yeah, there's a
stage?
couple there. Livestream Robbie said he's having trouble with the skew taking chips out of the wood, even when their bevel is rubbing. I have answered him in text and said I think he's cutting too low. Raise the tool rest up a little bit.
That is a very, yeah.
Anything to add to that?
No, I would say that the rule of chest on or above centre, not of the tool rest, but of your, I always say that your edge, if you're using a gouge or whatever, should be just on or just above centre. That's why you keep lowering and highering your rest depending on the thickness of bar of tool you're using. With a skew, personally, when I'm doing a planing cut especially, I will tend to have that tool rest before I put the tool on it. I will have that tool rest above centre, and it depends on the size of wood how much above centre I have it. And I would guess, as Pete says, if your handle's too low, if your tool rest is too low, then you've got to be really on song to get it right. It's much less forgiving, because I would guess possibly that your cutting edge is maybe below centre even. So you've got a lot of problems occurring there. You want to be your cutting edge, as I say, at least above centre with the skew, because at the angle you're approaching your work, your tool rest at the normal height is got to put your cutting edge too low, because don't forget you're cutting in the middle of the bottom third of the blade. So I think, as Pete says, that most probably is the problem.
Simon's asking, regarding the step centre, how would you get it located in very hard wood such as lead wood?
Easily.
I find it easy as well. Just does
Easily. There is no other answer to that. I have not. I've turned ebony with it. I've turned lignum vitae with it. I've turned some Australian wood that's like ironwood. And to get the tenons, I've just put it between stabs, and I've had no problem at all.
The teeth are directional, so they almost screw themselves into place.
They do. I'm not pushing Sorby, because I think Axminster actually do their own similar, but it's basically the same idea: a spring-loaded centre with teeth on the outside, and you can get, I think an inch is the biggest, 25 mil. The big ones. I haven't got. I haven't got the big ones. I've just got these medium ones. They do a small, medium, and large.
I have turned 14-inch trunks on my 5/8 one.
This is 5/8 as well.
Yeah.
They are brilliant. As I say, the only time I do find I've found problem with it. Normally I'd put a bowl, like I was talking about the eucalyptus, on a faceplate, but because it's end grain, I don't have a lot of confidence in screwing screws into end grain. So I prefer to get a tenon while it's between centres. But as I say, it was slipping its moorings because it was so soft. The wood is quite soft as well when it's wet, and it's moving all the time, and it just needed a 4-prong drive. But that's the only scenario I think that possibly the stab centres aren't the best drive to use.
Peter Cross has just joined us.
Good evening, Peter. Welcome. Oh, live stream Rob as well, I've noticed. Lloyd Glazer. A lot of people have joined that I haven't said hello to since we started, and I'd just like to say thank you for coming and welcome. Simon, good evening again. Okay, so I keep saying that I don't like using this chaff. Oh, another thing as well. You can also, and I wouldn't have a problem using that as a standard skew, actually. This is a 3/4 skew, which I got off the internet. many years ago, and I've just as you see, I've got a perfect bevel on it, but I've got that angle at just the right angle for my jaw sets, the Axminster ones, for dovetails. So I can get a dovetail accurately with that. That's another use, if you like, of the skew. One point to mention: if you do purchase a skew, a radius skew, they will come with what I call a perfect radius. It will just be a radius without that straight bit there. And I'll just demonstrate very quickly the reason I like that little straight bit there. Admittedly, on this 3/4, it's not going to be such a large piece, but if I use, well, I haven't got one which is just purely radiused. What it means is, if I'm doing a peeling cut and I'm using that straight bit there, then what it means is that I'm getting, for a tenon, if you can see that, I'm getting a right-angled tenon, if you like. Whereas if I take a bigger cut and use part of the radius as well, hang on, let's go there. What's going to happen is that this is not, as you can see, it's forming a dovetail, basically. It's not a problem to straighten it out, but that straight bit there gives me that ability to do a peeling cut, to make a tenon at right angles, which obviously with the standard skew, if you've got this parallel with your bedways or parallel with the wood, as you press in, because you've got no radius, you're going to get a square shoulder and a square tenon. So hopefully that's answered that. The reason why I put that little straight bit just there, about a fifth of the, but that's a personal thing. It's a personal thing. But I do notice actually that more and more manufacturers are offering skews with a slight radius, as they call it. So why do you think they're doing that? Because it's a little bit more user-friendly initially.
Same as I never used to offer fingernail grinds, and now it's pretty much the standard.
Yes,
things change.
They do. Evolve. Yeah, I mean, in that starter set that we did that Simon won, I was really surprised to find that the bowl gouge had a fingernail grind from the factory in a starter set. I was even more surprised to find that the spindle gouge had a straight over grind, which in my opinion is possibly more in need of a fingernail grind than the bowl gouge to start with, if you see what I mean. So why they don't put it on both of them, I don't know. But there you go. Right, okay. So, no more questions. First time I've managed
to... yeah, you got it. Oh. Carry on. I was supposed to read that one out.
Yeah, well, Graham Burdett.
Yeah.
No, yeah. First time I've managed to catch one of these sessions live. I have no questions, but had loads when I caught up with the other sessions. Oh, nice. Welcome anyway, Graham. Welcome, mate. Okay, I'm just going to...
Graham, you might come up with the question in a minute.
Sorry?
So hang in there, you might have a question in a minute.
Oh, good. Yeah, indeed. Gaza, got a Sorby Pro Edge from Snaton and wood turning supplies. Ace piece of kit. Use it for all sorts. Even make my own emery cloth belts. That's fine. That's great. I think, again, it's like with everything else. Things are very personal. I personally started off with aluminium oxide, and like everybody does when they start in the craft, then I finally invested quite heavily in a CBN setup with a slow speed grinder. I had tried the Sorby, and I think it was because I'd spent so much on the other, I was reluctant. And then one day I really had a go on the Sorby, and I was amazed. And I'm not pushing Sorby, I'm just saying, for me, for my turning, there is nothing better, personally. I'm not saying it's the only thing. I'm not saying it's the Holy Grail. The big thing that really impressed me with it was its repeatability. the ease of repeatability. Even with the one-way system, excuse me, that I had with my grinder, there was always that little hair that wasn't perfect when you had to, rock it back and forth, sometimes use the black marker system to make sure you got the whole bevel. I have never, ever done anything like that with a Pro Edge. Once it's all set up and you've got everything geared up to your turning and your angles, it's a 2-second job, a 10-second job every time. And that, to me, is brilliant. And, I can't. I think they're possibly, not for my turning, but I'm sure there are some restrictions with it. Pete's got a great video out, and I'm not promoting him as such, but Pete's got a great video out if you want to try the 40/40 bowl grind. There's a link to Pete's channel all the time in all my descriptions anyway, from lives and edited, and he's got a great video on how to set up the Pro Edge to get a 40/40 grind. It's brilliant. I don't turn as much as Pete. Pete's got far more experience than I'll ever have. But for what I do, when I turn, I've got everything geared up to my style and what I use it for. If I was doing more turning and making a living or making a partial living out of it, then possibly I would alter things. But I can only speak for what I do. Graham Mansfield, I completely agree, Mike. Oh, so good. Standard grinding wheel, but never have lock back. No, I think the Pro Edge is out of the box. That's the big thing as well. I mean, I had quite a bit of experience at the time I got the Pro Edge, but I was still blown away by the ease of setup. Literally, screw it down, turn it on, and sharpen your tools. It's such an easy system. And I think, Pete, for the 40/40 grind, because there is no 40 degree on there, you can drill a hole in the plate, and you've got it. You see, people also get hung up with bevel angles. It's got to be this, it's got to be that. A degree or so either way, personally, I don't think it's going to make any difference at all. So when I got the Pro Edge, for example, they're preset angles, which were near enough basically what I had on my other gouges, on my grinding system with the one way. There was slight half a degree here, half a degree there, maybe a degree here and there. I'm not bothered about that. I just spent a few hours putting everything to the Pro Edge. And now all my tools are easily sharpened. And I still don't think that a degree here or there, it's not an exacting science, makes any difference whatsoever, personally.
Ben's asking, do you cut your Axminster C-Dual spigot with straight sides or a slight dovetail? I would say yes.
Well, the C-Jaws?
Yeah.
The C-Jaws have got a dovetail on the outside for a mortise, but a tenon, they don't have a dovetail on the inside of the jaws, on the C-Jaws. They have a straight profile with a lip at the end. And funny enough, if I go to the overhead, I can show thee now. This little chappy here. Oh no, that hasn't got it. Hang on. Yeah, here. That is a mortise, a tenon for the C-Jaws. And you can see straight profile there. And I always put, with a thin parting tool, I put a little groove right next to the shoulder. And what happens is, if you can bear with me a second,
on some very hard woods, I will sometimes put a small dovetail on it for the tooth to bite into.
All right. Well, I don't see the point. Again, far be it for me to disagree with you, but the profile of the jaw is straight, and at the end there's a lip, as I say. So that lip will bite into softwood. There's no need to do what I did there. It will bite in if it's something like fairly punky spalted beech or something of that nature. That purely from the pressure will dig in, but what you need to make sure is it digs in far enough so that the mass of the jaw is actually seated on the tenon. But there's no need to dovetail for a tenon on the C jaws because they are not dovetailed. And believe me, when I started turning, and even when I done a couple of YouTube videos, like you'd never read the instructions, do we, guys? I was always forming a tenon for my dovetails with my C jaws when I just had that set of jaws. And one day I looked and I thought, you know what, they're not dovetailed. And I thought there was something wrong, so I sort of went to the manual, not the manual, went to the catalogue, and I looked, and sure enough, they're not dovetailed. So there you go. Mike, can you tell me if the stem drive that goes into the Axie chuck fits the full range of Axie sizes? 80. Yes, it will. Yeah, it will. I mean, it'll fit. The only jaws it won't fit because they protrude are the cylinder jaws. Because obviously there's too much room, there's too much length of the jaws there. Because it seats on the inner part of the jaw, on the back of the jaw, so it'll fit all jaws.
He was asking what you think of the diamond belt. I think we covered that one earlier.
Yeah, we have. Well, just to reiterate, I think it's brilliant. A well worthwhile investment. And if your next question is going to be how long will it last, Martin Stephen Smith, pro turner, has had his for about 5 years, and it's still going strong. And I think he's washed it once. So there you go. So for the Pro Edge, yeah, those that use it personally, though, because of most of my gouges, bowl and spindle are freehand sharpened and sharpened at 40 degrees, I prefer. Yeah, that's fine. Brickhouse, I agree with you. If you freehand sharpen, I mean, you can freehand sharpen on the Pro Edge, of course you can. But, you know, it is not, as I say, nothing is the be-all and end-all. It's just personal preference. That's my pleasure, Nigel. Oh, hello, Buster. How are you? Oh, you talking to Mike Stratton there, are you, Mick Stratton? Okay, I'm going to a very, very short break, and then I'll attempt to do a few beads for you. I'll be a laugh. Right, okay. All I'm doing tonight is showing you what you can do with the Skew. I have actually, and I'm not going to attempt it, I've actually done a goblet with the Skew and nothing else, even hollowed it out, very roughly, mind you, but it is possible. But why would you want to do it? Unless you're an idiot like me. Right, we'll have a quick break, 2 minutes, and then we'll carry on. And you know what I'm going to do? And I'm going to turn my mic off for this so nobody can hear me. But I must remember to turn it back on again.
Got to turn your mic off. No, you're right.
Ah, I know why.
I think anybody that can freehand sharpen will probably be better off with a wheel, as long as it's the right sort of right size of wheel. If you want a repeatable edge and you don't turn daily, then you need a jig of some sort.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. What's Adrian said? Oh yeah, he's coming late. Hello, Adrian. Welcome. Joseph King, only part of the Pro Edge that isn't covered by a lifetime warranty is the motor, and that comes with the main base at a cost of £85. Oh well. That's good to know as well, Joseph.
Yep.
Okay. Right. I can't turn beads with the Skew, nor can I, Rob. But I'm going to attempt to, because I'm an idiot. I'll do the planing cut last because I'm going to. It's my least favourite cut as well, but I'm going to need it in the chuck, obviously, for a planing chuck. So
one
planing.
of the problems with turning beads with a Skew is if
Catches.
you're doing it with the heel, you lose sight of the cutting edge at a certain point.
Whoops. Yes,
as you're rolling it in.
Yeah.
And so therefore, to get around that, if you practice doing it with the toe,
Yeah.
though there's a higher risk of a catch, you will get used to the motion of movement. You'll get
Yeah.
the muscle memory, so you can then get past that blind spot when doing it with the heel.
Yeah. I am not going to attempt. I'm not going to attempt. Do I look? Do I look? Does my bum
You're
look
very
big in
sexy, that
these?
much,
Does
yeah.
my bum look big in these? Right. Sorry for the ladies there. Very sexist remark. That not meant to offend.
The answer to that is not only no, dear, it's also got to be said within a certain time limit. Any more than half a second, you're dead.
Exactly, and you've got to be able to run fast. Okay, beads. Now, this is where the Mr. Round skew would be advantageous. If you're like me, I turn my beads with one or two things. Either a beading tool, a proper beading tool, which is made for the job only, or I use a spindle gouge. Normally a spindle gouge because that's what's in my hand. Not because I'm a production turner, but because I'm lazy, and it means I've got to stop turning and turn around and pick out the beading tool. If I'm doing something which I have done several of in latter years, beaded forms like a hollow form, people like Les Thorne and others can do their beads, Pat Carroll, do their beads with, and Ed Oliver, as it happens, do their beads with a spindle gouge, and they do repetitive beads around the hollow form. Well, I can't do that. I haven't tried it because I know I can't do it, so I use a beading tool. Problem with the beading tool is you've got to get it just right, otherwise you get tear out. So it has a learning curve as well. Like every tool, you think, oh, that's going to do the job, but you need to get the technique right to get the best from the tool. And that is, in my opinion, true of every tool you use, even down to the humble parting tool, has a technique to it to get the best from it. Right. We'll start with the skew that I'm least happy with, and we'll do some beads and attempt the odd cove with this as well. Now, whether you want picture in picture, I don't know. No, that won't work. So we will stick to the overhead. And hopefully that'll give a good enough. Is the focus all right? Yes, it is. Okay, so just for the interests of speed, and I've lost, oh, the reason I've lost my normal parting tool is because it's the other end of my round skew chisel. So, okay, so if we just make a couple of grooves like so, fairly even, and turn a bead. So we want to round over that with a skew chisel. Michael, why are you doing it with this? I don't know, because you're an idiot. Okay. So the same thing applies with, now what Pete was saying is when you're doing it this way, you can, especially if you're a righty like me, you're going to be losing sight of what you're doing. The whole idea, if pretend this is the right hand part of a bead, is to get that effect. Now on a larger piece, it's a bit easier to achieve. But with a larger tool on a smaller piece, you've got quite a bit of movement. So if you start in approximately the middle and just start, you have to move the tool as well. A lot of the time, I found in the beginning what I was doing, I'm doing this, I'm keeping it there and I'm rolling over. Well, the tool isn't going anywhere, so it's going to dig in because you've got to move. The action is to move from right to left in this case, move the tool along the tool rest to maintain your bevel contact, and you have to twist as well to get that profile. Now, if I get a catcher, I'm going straight to the radius skew. That's no good. I got to do it that way. That's one side. And my least favourite side. Now I'm using the heel as well, but as I am going towards the middle, I'm moving across and lifting the handle so I can slice into the wood. Now, providing I don't lose my bevel contact, I'm not going to get a catch, even if I use just the heel. Now, okay, that's not a brilliant bead by any means, but you can understand what you have to do is to start your cut and then lift your handle because you want to get down to the middle there. You want to keep the cut where you can, as much as you can, at the same position on that edge, and lift your handle but move across. It's the same when you're doing just a round over. A lot of people will try and do a round over, keeping, I'm exaggerating here, but keeping the tool in the same place here and just doing that and not moving the tool, and you're not going to do it. Number one, you've got to run out of wood because you're not moving, lifting your handle, and you're not moving across where you're actually turning, because you want to start here and you want to end up there, so you've got to move your tool that much across the tool rest, if I'm explaining it properly. Now, doing it the other way, like Pete says, using the toe, you can do it that way, and it's slightly easier because you can see what you're doing, but you still have to lift the handle and engage this part of the blade, otherwise you're just pushing with a point. So, but you can, it is almost easier to do it that way.
It is the same motion.
Yes.
So you've got to move the tool. It's the same motion. Because you can see it,
Yeah.
you can learn. But there is one of the big advantages of doing a bead with a skew is the transition from the bead down to the piece of timber below it. You get a nice, crisp, sharp edge.
Yes.
You don't get that if you do it with the toe. You only get that with the heel. Yeah.
The thing is that, again, when you're coming around like so, and you're coming around, when you are at that level there, you can actually let go because you're not going to be scooted either way because the blade is directly on the point of cut. And I'll try and prove that. My headphones are slipping. Sorry. If you come down and you roll and you're there, you can let go because you're not going to do anything because it's not cutting. It's just digging there. It's when you start to get I got a catch there. No, that's what I was trying to do.
It's pretty much at the point where you lose sight of it as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Here we are, look, nice catch there. And the reason for that, as I'm going down here, I'm not lifting the handle. So what's happening is all I'm getting is point contact. The heel is just digging in, and it's decided, right, okay, I'm not going. Because it wasn't at the perpendicular, it's gonna do what it did there. So if I get I'll take the round skew now.
Ben said, Mike, can you demonstrate 8 identical beads, please?
Yep, not a problem. Just say there, Ben. As you were. How many do you want? 8. Okay.
Yep.
Here we go. There's 1. There's 2. There's 3. There's 4. 5. 6. 7. And we'll put the 8th over here. There we go. Thank you. Job done. And the next question, please.
Mick Stratton said he's taping this to send to Steve Jones.
And you see there, because I did it very quickly, you get bits of tear out. But if you use the beading tool properly, and nice and easily, and come up onto the, come into the cut. This is not a lesson on how to use the beading tool, but if you are going to do a bead here, if you do it nice and gently and wiggle it slightly, it does take a bit of time. And as soon as it's that little mark in the middle goes, you're done. And this, as I say, is my favourite chestnut. There's absolutely no tear out there whatsoever. A perfect bead ready for sanding. And that, if I'm doing a lot of beads like this, which don't happen very often, I will use this tool, and I think it's brilliant. So there we go. So sorry to be a pain, Ben, but I actually did 8 beads. Right, what was I doing? Oh yeah, I was just saying, this is if we take the little 1/2 inch skew, and just again, it's the same technique, but because it's radiused, I find it a lot easier.
Just to say, people, if you want to support Mike's channel and keep everything running smoothly, rather than use a super chat, which takes a lot of money for YouTube's expenses, there's a buy me a coffee link at the top of the chat. We prefer it if you went that way and order coffee rather than give 40% of your money to YouTube.
Thanks for that, Pete. And there's a bead with the little skew, and it is really easy to use and a very forgiving skew, and you can do your planing cuts with it just as easily. And again, it's much less catch prone. Well, I've got this on. Oh yes, that's the other thing as well.
Rob's saying, before you leave that bit, could you go over one of those beads with the skew, or are they too small?
One of these?
Yeah.
I could do.
Tidy up the
I'm not going to, but I could do. Yeah. No, you can. Yes. No, they're not. They're not too small. You mean just cleaning them up?
Yeah. Well, I guess that's what he means anyway.
I could if I was good at it. It's a bit cock-eyed, but yes, the answer is yes, you can. And on a serious note, and I'm not trying to make excuses, if I'd spent a little bit of time practicing this, I haven't done a bead with a skew for a long time. The surface on there now is nice. There's no tear out there. There's not tear out in every one, but I did go across there a bit quickly. But yeah, and you could do that with a bigger skew as well. But for little things like that, that's why I tend to think that each tool has its uses. You might not use it every day, but there are certain situations that you think, oh yes, that'll do the job for me on this occasion, and it normally does. But the other thing I was going to show, which I'll do very, very quickly, is you can do coves as well. And I'll try with the straight skew. Yeah, okay.
Adrian, if you watch from the beginning, we did do sharpening at the beginning of this one.
Yes, we did. We did indeed. Right, I just want... I gotta... Let's just say we wanted, gotta lower the tool rest a bit. Always turn the lathe off before you move your tool rest. Okay. Let's just say that we want a bead there and we'll have a cove. We'll work on a cove there, slightly. If I use my little one, so we're going down to the middle. It won't be a perfect cove, but you can. It's basically a scooping motion like you would use to make a cove. The only thing is you have to be careful not to catch your points. I mean, it's not a perfect cove, obviously. Nothing's perfect that I do. But the point I'm making is you can get a concave profile with the skew. Now, if we flatten this off very quickly, the reason I'm getting the juddering is I'm pushing hard. Now, if we just use that there, we're doing the same thing. We're going down and up and down and up. And you notice what I'm doing is I'm raising the tool on the wood. So I'm scooping. But again, I haven't done this for a long time, but it can be done. Shallow-wise, you can do shallow coves quite easily. And with practice, it becomes easier.
You think of the shape of your tool handles, that sort of cove you can do very nicely with a skew.
Yeah. Oh yes, that's right, shallow coves. A bit like you were talking about the spindle roughing gouge for that sort of operation as well.
Same.
Anything shallow, because if it goes too deep, obviously you're going to get problems with your tool fouling on the wood behind it, if you like. So, you know, there is a very rough show. And we'll just see how we do it with this, if I can make it a bit deeper with that. But the same principle applies where you go down and up. And this is where we're going to get a catch, maybe. Same principle. And we're going up now. Yeah, sort of. There you go. A semblance of a cove.
On that wood where it's a good cut.
Yeah. Either that or I was rubbing the bevel, but yes. But yeah, you can do that as well. And in the hands of a proficient skew user, you can do that sort of thing in a design. If you're doing spindle work or production work, you can do a lot of that without having to change tools. You know, if it's a deeper cove, then you would most probably go to a spindle gouge, you know, but it's the same, basically the same motion. You're going down and you're scooping, and when you've come to the base of your cove, you then start to move. In case of the skew, you're moving it sort of forward, if you like, to sort of go not uphill, but you're making the curve less towards the middle, obviously. But yes, it can be done. Now the next
slight bead that ends up in a planing cut.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Very well put. Very well put, young man. Very impressed with that. Okay, so the last one, which again is something I haven't done for a long time, is a peeling cut. And I will reiterate that the whole idea of I've got nothing to do with planing cut with, really. That's silly. Oh, I'll tell you what we can do. We could use this, which is the what I was using last week.
Mary wants to know if they're allowed to breathe now.
Yeah, yeah, of course you can. Of course you can, mate. This is the old brandy glass I'm putting on here that from last week. I don't know what I used it for, but it's if I can just. No, we'll have to go to that one. What I'll do, I'll just get rid of that, the end of that, and I'll get rid of the, if I can, the old elbow stabber. I'll just clean this up a little bit and then I can do a peeling cut for you. Or attempt to do a peeling cut. Yeah. Just get rid of this.
Ryan's in the chat saying he's practicing on a couple of dibbers every day.
Yeah.
Just that crappy timber, just get the feel for it. Absolutely right.
Exactly.
The only way to use a skew is to practice the skew.
It is. And that's very true, Brian. I think anything you use. You see, I'm using this half-inch spindle gouge, and I'm 100% totally at home with it, as it gives a massive catch. But no, it's what you're used to, what you use on a regular basis. You will naturally become more proficient with it. I don't care what it is you use. It's number one. It's the confidence in using it, knowing what it can achieve. With the skew, because a lot of people in the beginning become afraid of it because they get catches and they hear all this folklore about the skew. Yes, it's a bit of a steeper learning curve. Yes, it requires a bit more practice, but look, I picked up that half-inch spindle gouge and I didn't even think. I knew it was, if it's skidded back, it doesn't bother me. If it does, it just means I've lost the bevel. But it is confidence in what you're doing, and if you've got confidence, you're not holding things so firmly. All the elements that go in to causing problems with a tool, whatever tool it is, if you have not got those misgivings, you're immediately going to be more relaxed and you are immediately going to get better results. And that is the same for anything, in my opinion. So if you go back to, excuse me, go back to the picture-in-picture, or not the picture-in-picture, but it might be the best view actually. So if we're going to do what a peeling cut is, basically what I was doing there, not a peeling cut, sorry, I forgot what it's called now, a slicing cut. Basically what I was doing there is just sort of cleaning up the edge of a piece like this. So the idea with a peeling cut is to achieve that end with the skew. So hopefully it'll pick it up. So what the point is, you're using the, I'll just give this a quick touch up as well, just to prove how quick it is. Okay, we are looking to face off, if you like, for want of a better word. So the idea is to go in with the toe, and I don't know if the top camera will pick this up enough. I'll just go to the overhead for a minute. The idea is to go in with your bevel nearest the work at 90 degrees, and if you put it tight to the wood, what you want to do is just get the point engaged and just a little bit of the edge, but just below the point or above the point in this case, above the toe, and lift the handle and start to slice the wood. But you need this bevel to be just off at the top, because if it catches, it's got to obviously catch that way. So what you're doing is that. So you've just got the wood in, we get in the cut, and you're making your way to the middle. And I'll show that again here. And don't be afraid to try things hand turning your wheel, lathe, because you can get an idea of what you need to be, where your edge needs to be, what your setup needs to be to achieve. Now, if I turn this by hand, and what I'm doing, as I say, I'm just engaging the toe of the edge and a little bit of the edge behind it. And what I want to do is achieve a cut. Now that's what I need to do. And the top here, as you can see, is just off the face of the work. Now, ideally, when you're in horizontal position, you want the toe to be in the middle. So we want to go a little bit higher and turn on and try. So again, I want my left hand with the bevel facing the headstock to be at 90 degrees to give me a 90-degree cut. And I need to engage the point, the heel, and I've never been very good at these cuts. I fell off it a bit there, but the big thing to remember is you've got to keep, it's no good just using the point. No, I fell off the cut there, but I'm not bothered. That's not the point I'm trying to make. You have to, once you've engaged the point, you need to lift the handle a little bit to engage that little bit of the blade of the edge. And then as you're progressing towards the center, you need to lift the handle up in proportion to that to maintain that cut. Now I can pick that cut up, bearing in mind I've got this part just away from the face of the work. And there might be a bit of juddering there actually, but yeah, a little bit there. Now, why did I get that? Because my bevel, possibly I lost my bevel a bit there. I could actually do it a bit lower. We'll try once more. Okay, so engage the point. No, what I did there was take too much. I'll get there. Oh, sorry, you've got to say something, Pete.
Yep, I think you've got a 25-degree angle on that and you're cutting from 15 degrees.
That's the easiest way to do it.
Rob's asked a question. He said,
yeah.
Is there a general size of diameter for the spindle for practicing on? My answer would be start at 3 inches, finish at 3 millimeters. So, what would you start to practice on, Mike?
Yes, I'd agree. Okay, with practice, but I think you get the idea. So I'm getting there now. See? It's not perfect, but I think you understand the point. The whole point is just to keep the heel just away from the surface. And as Pete says, you want to be traveling, and you don't want to take too big a cut either. You just want to be starting off, lifting the handle so you're slicing and keeping everything in the same plane. There we go. After about 4 attempts, I've managed it, and I'm honest now, that is a really smooth surface. So if you're prepared to do the practice, then you can see how versatile this tool is. And it would be interesting. and I will try it once with this as well, just to see, because I haven't done it with that. See on there, just for a laugh. And the same thing applies. It's the same theory. Once you engage the point, no, I'm not happy with that, so I'm not going to carry on. But it can be done as well with the standard skew. But as I say, and this is not an excuse, it's a fact. This straight skew took me a long time to produce, and I did it purely for this live. Because until that one, you can see how short it is. That's the one I've experimented on. I actually turned that from a radius skew into this, which took quite a lot of steel away, quite a lot of time. But I will most probably never use that again. For that, I'll most probably put a little radius on it. But it's personal preference. It's personal preference. So I think that just
in for Rob again.
Yeah, sure.
What Brian's doing with the dibbers is cutting a taper. And that is extremely good practice with a skew because your diameter is changing as you're following it down. And that is good practice.
Yeah.
You effectively have to set your tool rest for the diameter of the thinnest part of the taper and then adjust yourself to start at the wide part of the taper. So it's good practice all the way through.
Yeah. There are a great number of good YouTube videos on practicing with the skew, what to do, like whatever you want to do. But what Pete just said then is great practice. And the thing is that if you get a bit of old knotty old pine or something, that still, it will amaze you. When you get that cut right, the surface finish you can get on a wide-grained soft wood off the tool, really, really impressive. But it does take practice. I also sometimes, when I'm feeling in the mood, when I'm doing it, let's just say that is a goblet I'm doing. When I want to do a finishing cut, I will sometimes use the skew just to do a finishing cut, which saves on obviously sanding. You can start to sand at a lower, at a higher grit, which then reduces the risk of radial scratches as well. And when I've got it right, and this is not sort of, oh, look how clever I am, it's what the tool will do. When you get it right, you can start sanding, and I say this with absolutely no fear of contradiction at 240 on most woods. Ash, I do a lot of ash, ash especially. If you get that finishing cut correct, you can start at 240. Which is it's no big deal, is it? I've actually I did a demo once where I actually got it right, and I started using Yorkshire grit straight off the skew chisel and got the same sort of finish as I did on the other side where I had sanded up to 240. So there was no sand in Yorkshire grit Hampshire sheen, and the surface was the finish was as good as doing it the other way. But it doesn't happen often enough because I don't do it often enough. But there you go.
I mean, there are certain things where the skew comes into its own, and things like table legs where you're going from square to bead to round to whatever shape. The skew is just the best tool there is for that sort of thing. Otherwise, you are changing tool every 5 minutes.
Exactly. You see,
so there are certain things where it is perfect, and other things where you are probably better off using other tools because you're used to them.
Yeah,
it does depend on what you're cutting.
And that is the point that I make in all these lives. I am not a pro turner. I don't spend enough time behind the lathe. So I tend, when I'm doing turning for myself, or if somebody asks me to do something or commission, whatever, I use the tools that I know will perform, providing I'm on form that day, and get the job done as quickly and as efficiently as I can on those odd occasions. Now, if you're a pro turner, then those occasions have to be every day. And that's why, and as Pete says, the if you can do 3 cuts with one tool, if you're using it properly, or 4 cuts with one tool, why only use it for 2 cuts and have to change tools to do the other 2 cuts? If you can do all the cuts with one tool, then that's going to be more cost effective and more efficient. That's why I keep harping on about production turners. A lot of production turners will use the Skew chisel for the majority of their work where they can, because it's quicker and it leaves a better surface. It is a marvellous tool, but it does require extra time to perfect it.
And a little bit of determination, I think. I think it's got a bad press.
It has got a bad press, definitely.
Because it's got a bad press, people approach it nervously, which means you tend to grip it too tight, which means you tend to use it incorrectly. If you get over the bad press and just use it as a tool, you'll find it easier to manage.
I quite agree. And I'll be honest with you, to all those people that are still here, that applies, in my opinion, to every tool you use. It's the grip. When I used to play golf, very mediocrely, but I played golf, I only got down to, I think, 15 was my handicap. I'd never had a lesson, not because I'm clever, but I was told by a pro that he would spend the first 4 or 5 lessons getting rid of all my bad habits, because I started off on my own, as you do. Now, because time was limited, as it always has been, I don't want to go spending time practicing. I want to get out on the golf course. I want to enjoy the surroundings and enjoy a game of golf with the lads. So I never had a lesson. And if I'd had a lesson, or had lessons in the beginning, I wouldn't have picked up all the bad habits. And the same goes for turning. Now, one of the biggest problems I had, and I was told by one of my mates, was I was holding the club too tight. And I was losing that flexibility in the wrist, in my follow through, etc. And I worked on that on my own, and that did improve my game. And exactly the same happens here. If you're holding on to your tool handle so tight, everything is tense, everything is locked in, and you have no flexibility. And that's where problems start to arise. So approach everything in a relaxed form. Make sure your shoulders are down where they should be. That's why the lathe height, I know it's different for some people, everybody has their preference, but the sort of rule of thumb to start off with is that you're able to turn with your arms just at your side, and you just bring up to hold the tool. You're not doing any of this hunching business, and you're not bending your back excessively. It just gives you that sort of natural position to do your turning, which means a lot less stress. Every time I do a live, I'm not stressed, but I'm obviously want things to go, and I'm not as relaxed as I would normally be when I'm turning on my own or doing an edited video. I always get, a bit of discomfort in my shoulders at the end of it because I'm a little bit tense. So it is a common problem. But if you're going to do it, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, you couldn't do it because you'd be a physical wreck, wouldn't you, at the end of it? So you have to be relaxed when you're turning. Somebody said, I can't remember who it was, you should never do a turning that beats you up. Let the tool do the work. And it's very true. If the wood, it doesn't even matter if it's a big bit of wood and there's loads of voids in it. If you set up correctly and let the wood come on although it's clunkety clunk, it'll do the job. Don't try and force it. Let the wood come on, let it slice the fibres, and you'll get there. It might take a little longer, but you'll get there without any sort of pain and stress and muscle ache. Easier said than done, I know.
Comments coming up.
Sorry, no, Buster West is brilliant. He said, I tried holding my driver with a loose grip, threw it 50 yards, but dead straight. Brilliant, Buster. Absolutely brilliant. Oh, dear. Graham Burdett, are these live sessions every Sunday? They were when I was on furlough. I did one last Sunday. I've done one today. I won't be doing one next Sunday for definite, and it's all to do with work and family commitments, etc. And it's unlikely I'll do the following Sunday, so it's going to be 3 weeks, I would think, unless things change. But I'd love to do them every week, but because I work, I can't do one of these and then get up at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning and do 12 hours work. So, because I'm too old. But luckily, Pete and Mark, I mean, Mark on this occasion is not able to join us, but normally Pete and Mark are pretty flexible for Sunday nights. So
we got nothing better
normally,
to do. We'll just come and hang out here.
say what again?
We've got nothing better to do. We'll come and hang out here.
Yeah, exactly. So, they get bored here instead of somewhere else, really. Okay, well, I think that just about ends what I'm going to do, unless anybody has anything else they want me to do or any questions. I'll just hang back a little bit. It's sort of 9:30, and we're going sort of a couple of hours now. So let's say 5 or 10 minutes, we'll call it an evening, unless anybody has. Right, if centre is elbow height, it seems fine to me. Yeah, that is. It's not set. Nothing is set in stone, Gaza, but that is a good starting point, and for the majority of people, that is fine. If you've got someone like Emma the Tidy Turner, Emma Cook, who is a professional turner, member of RPT, she turns with the spindle height, I would think, about 4 foot above her. No, but I mean, it's a lot higher. So she's actually turning like this. But that's how she's learned, and she is a very proficient turner. And she's the same height, or maybe not quite as high. My wife's just under 5 foot, and I think Emma's around that area too.
Also, as a pro demonstrator, she's
superb.
Current situation is she was going around clubs using lays at whatever height they happen to be. So
exactly. Yeah.
Having a lay set to your height isn't always an advantage if you've got to go and use somebody else's lays tomorrow.
Sorry, I'm just laughing. Yorkshire Grit. Have you got any chairs you want flattening? Mr. Glynn, Senior. A little story for those of you still left that might be interested. Glynn came down and stayed with me for. He was doing one of his bike meets, and he stayed on his way down from Yorkshire, and we were sitting in the garden having a drink, and he lent his ample weight a little bit too much on this wooden chair that I've had for years, been in the family for years, and it collapsed. And I mean, I don't mean just broke, I mean it collapsed. So that was the reason for that little job. Notice he hasn't been invited back since. But he only drives a bus just to upset the passengers. Yeah, you're right there, Michael. Not many passengers at the moment to upset, unfortunately.
James, glad you enjoyed it, Adrian. Do something with the negative rake to show the negative and the skew are basically the same.
Yes, that's very excellent. You mentioned this earlier on, didn't you, Pete? And you forgot.
I did, yeah.
Right, okay. Very quickly, I did mention the fact that a skew is basically a negative rake scraper, isn't it? Because it has two bevels. This happens to be 25-25, and my negative rakes, most of them are 35-35, but that doesn't matter. So with the skew, whether that will actually do it, no, I think we'll use that. Yeah. Now, if I can move that camera out the way, because nobody's going to see me using it. Again, the same thing applies. If I use a normal, or I say normal, if I use one of my negative rake scrapers, or here's a scraper that just has a slight relief angle on it, okay? Now if I use that in negative rake, you can see what's happening, okay? It's working. And the same thing will happen with the skew, providing I raise the tool rest. You want to be, ideally with a negative rake, you want to be cutting on just about centre height. But as you can see, I'm getting the same result, if you like, using the skew. So it will double as a negative rake for doing that nice, fine finish. And if you look at that from the middle out, I think you'll find that it's quite a nice surface. And that's on end grain, and obviously you can do the same on side grain as well. So yes, a skew chisel can, it is essentially a negative rake scraper. Again, if you're using a standard, excuse me, if you're using a standard straight over skew, I haven't attempted it with that, to be honest with you. And I can't find it now. I've lost it. That's good. I've actually lost it. I can't. I've misplaced it, I should say. Come on. Oh, there he is. There he is. Am I going to try that? Answer. Yeah, it'll. I'm going to try it off camera first, because if there's any blood, I don't want to be on. Yeah, you can. Yeah, okay. I'm confident.
Tourist camera.
Yeah. So again, you still don't want to engage the full blade, but again, you can. It's because of its nature. You can still use a straight over skew to do that. Whether I
You just
would
got to
do,
watch the corners.
yeah, you've got to watch the corners. Um, but yeah, you can do it. So yes, and I wasn't doing that to show how clever I was. The reason I didn't want I hadn't actually ever done it with a straight grind skew, but yeah, it can be done. But the main thing, as Pete just said, is make sure the biggest thing with the skew when you're using it, wherever you're using it, is getting them points engaged in the cut when you don't want them to. That's when you get your catches. But yeah, it works on the same principle as all tools, really. Bevel contact and smooth movement and not too much pressure. Let the tool do the work. Quick question from Stuart. I joined late. Oh, sorry. If this has been covered, my skew is at 15. Yeah, that's fine. Is there an advantage? No. Is there advantage? Right. Is there? Stuart is saying his skew is at 15 degrees on both bevels. Is there an advantage of 25, 25? No, there isn't. No, there isn't.
It's about the same as having a 45 or a 55 degree on a bowl gauge, really.
Yeah.
It's preference.
Yeah. I totally agree. There is no advantage. It's a personal preference. The main reason I do, I just find I have them all the same because it's easier to sharpen. Then if I've got the platform there, and if I'm having a session with skews, I can just touch them up and they're all 25, 25. When I had, I think the skew that came from Robert Sorby, I haven't got now. I sold it, but that was 15 degrees, and I think on the Pro Edge actually it's 15 degrees for the skew is what they say on the instructions.
It does. I'm reading it there.
Yeah, it does. So that's fine, but it's just personal. And of course, if you've got a 15-degree bevel on both, you're going to get essentially a sharper edge, if you like, a more acute edge. Pete uses 15-15 and he uses his skew a lot more than I do. So, it's personal choice.
And again, all of mine are 15-15 because why would I have angles to remember? I'm bad enough at remembering stuff as it is.
That's right. The whole thing for me, as a hobby turner, if you like, and a YouTuber, is ease, is repeatability. I tried, again, digressing slightly, because someone was on about the Irish grind. Yeah, this is going. I think I covered this briefly in last week's bowl gauge one. I've managed to get an Irish grind, proper Irish grind. People swear by it, but for what I do and the amount of bowls I do, I find my standard grind with swept-back wings is adequate. So and easy. So I just use that. Thank you, Colin. Thank you very much indeed for coming. I appreciate it, mate. Good night, Patrick. Thank you for coming. And take care.
Mark will be back. He's just not available tonight.
Yeah. James, Mike, and Pete. Thank you, Jim, for coming. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jerry. That's very kind of you. No, thank you for turning up. Thank you, Graham Burdett. Appreciate it. Glad you enjoyed it. Okay, guys, if there aren't any more questions, I think I'll call it an evening. And I'd like to thank you all for turning up. I was very, very pleased to see you all, as I always am, of course. Big thanks to Pete for being my pit crew and keeping me informed of all the things I'm doing wrong and what the things I should be doing and camera changes, etc., etc. And basically, I will let you all know when the next one is when I know. Hopefully, will be within the next 3 weeks. But I do have an edited video coming up, hopefully next week. So if I get round to editing it. Okay, well, thank you very much once again. You take care and stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers now.
Bye, everyone. See you next time.